So, good day everyone, good day attorney. So, today I will discuss the consolidated revenue regulations on estate tax and donors tax incorporating the amendments introduced by Republic Act number 8424, the Tax Reform Act of 1997. So, under Section 6, computation of the net estate of a resident who is either a citizen or resident of the Philippines. So, the value of the net estate of a citizen or resident alien of the Philippines shall be determined by deducting from the value of the gross estate. So the following items of deduction: A. Expenses, losses, indebtedness, and taxes. Such amounts for first is actual funeral expenses, whether paid or unpaid, up to the time of interment, or an amount equal to the 5% of the gross estate, whichever is lower, but in no case to exceed 200,000 pesos. So, any amount of funeral expenses nga sobra sa 200,000 pesos threshold, whether the same had actually been paid or payable pa, shall not be allowed as a deduction under this subsection. So, neither shall the unpaid portion of the funeral expenses incurred which is in excess of the 200,000 pesos threshold be allowed to be claimed as a deduction under claims against the estate provided under subsection C hereof. So, funeral expenses, estate tax deduction. Ang term of funeral expenses is dili lang na siya limitado sa usual nga gihuna-una nato, like kabaong or lubong. So, sa law, mas malawak ang coverage ani. Included diri ang mga sumusunod. So, first or sa A is the mourning apparel. So, mga pangluksa nga gamit sa surviving spouse o unmarried minor children sa namatay. Basta gipalit o gigamit specifically para sa lubong. So, example, nagpalit og black dress ang asawa o black polo ang anak para isuot sa burol or sa lubong. So, sa B is ang wake expenses. Included ang mga gasto while ginaburol, like for example, pagkaon o mga mainom sa bisita. So, example, pag-order of food trays, kape, tubig, snacks para sa wake. So, sa C is we have the publication charges for death notices. So, mga gasto sa pag-announce sa pagkamatay sa newspaper ba or laing publication. So, example, nagpa-publish ang family of obituary sa dyaryo. So, next, we have the D. So, telecommunication expenses. So, mga communication expenses para ma-inform ang relatives o friends about sa pagkamatay. So, ang example ani is phone calls, text messages, or official announcements. Sa letter E naman is the burial plot, tombstone, monument, or mausoleum. So apil ang gasto sa pagpalit og burial lot, lapida, monumento, o mausoleum. Pero wala na apil ang maintenance or upkeep ani. Kung daghan og burial lots nga pag-aari ang deceased, ang plot lang kung asa siya jud ilubong ang deductible. So, example, nagpalit og memorial lot worth 100,000 para sa actual burial. So, sa letter F is the interment or cremation fees. Ang mga bayad para sa actual burial o cremation process. So, example diri is ang crematorium fees, cemetery, interment fees. So, letter G naman is other expenses related to burial rites. So, apil ang uban pang mga gasto nga directly connected sa lubong o sa burial ceremony. So, example, flowers, hair service, and chapel rental. But, dili ta na expenses related sa pagkamatay kay pwedeng i-deduct. So, unsa man to? First is expenses paghuman sa lubong. So, ang example ana is like prayer meetings, novena, anniversary mass, o entertainments. Second is ang expenses nga ang relative or friends ang nagbayad. So, for example, na kay tita nga nagbayad sa flower, so dili na siya deductible sa estate. So, what are those important requirements para ma-claim ang funeral expenses as deduction? So, dapat actual na nagasto, and second, dapat na resibo, invoice, or laing pang proof of payment. Kung walay supporting documents, pwedeng dili dawaton bilang or as deduction. So, sa madaling salita, ang funeral expenses sa estate tax is dili lang sa simple na nagasto sa lubong. Sakop pod ang tanan nga reasonable og actual expenses directly connected sa wake, burial o cremation. Basta naalay enough na documents or patunay like receipts o ubang requirements sa batas. So, next is we have judicial expenses of the testamentary or intestate proceedings. So, ang judicial expenses kay ang mga nagasto while ginaayos ang estate sa namatay through court proceedings. So, whether na ay will estate or walay will, which is intestate. So, apil diri ang mga expenses para sa pag-identify o pag-inventory sa assets, administration ng estate, pagbayad ng utang ng estate, o ang pag-allocate sa properties sa heirs. So, deductible lang ang mga expenses na nagasto kutob lang sa deadline sa filing ng estate tax return, including ang extensions which is gi-allow siya sa law. So, naay mga halimbawa nga deductible judicial expenses. So, what are those? So, we have here the executor or administrator's fees. Second is the attorney's fees, court fees, accountant's fees, appraiser's fees, clerk hire, cost in preserving or distributing estate, storage and maintenance expenses, and broker's fees sa pagbaligya sa property. So, halimbawa, namatay si Miss Jeen and na siya'y nabilin nga property. So, para ma-settle ang estate, nagbayad ang pamilya og 100,000 pesos sa lawyer, 30,000 pesos sa court fees, and 20,000 pesos sa appraiser. So, ang total judicial expenses niya is 150,000 pesos. So, pwede na siya ibawas sa gross estate. So mabawasan sad ang taxable estate. In simple terms, judicial expenses are necessary expenses incurred in settling the estate through legal proceedings. So, since these expenses directly relate to estate settlement, the law allows them as deduction from the gross estate. So, next is we have the four claims against the estate. So, provided that at the time the indebtedness was incurred, the debt instrument was duly notarized, and if the loan was contracted within 3 years before the death of the decedent, the administrators or executor shall submit a statement showing the disposition of the proceeds of the loan. So, naay mga requisites for deductibility of claims against the estate. So, sa A is personal obligation ng deceased. So, pasabot ana is tunay nga utang niya tong buhi pa siya. Dili apil ang funeral expenses, medical expenses before burial, kay na sila separate nga category. So, sa letter B naman is contracted in good faith. So, bot pasabot is legitimate ang utang, dili fake or gibuhat lang para makalikay sa tax. Sa letter C is valid and enforceable in court. So, legal ang utang and pwedeng i-demand ng creditor. Sa letter D is hindi prescribed, which means dili pa expired ang right sa creditor para maningil. So, example, umutang si Mr. Santos ng 500,000 pesos sa bangko 2 years before death. So, and also na ay notarized loan agreement, valid documents, and unpaid balance pa. Pwedeng i-deduct sa estate. So, claims against the estate refer to valid debts of the decedents existing at the time of death. So the purpose of this deduction is to ensure that only the actual net wealth transferred to heirs is taxed. Fourth is we have claims of the deceased against insolvent persons where the value of the decedent's interest therein is included in the value of the gross estate. So, kini siya is kung naay taong nagkautang sa deceased pero bankrupt or walay pang bayad. So, pwede sa i-deduct since dili na realistically collectible. So, for example, naigipautan si Mr. Reyes 200,000 pesos sa iyang friend pero nalugi and declared insolvent. Since dili na siya makolekta, pwede na siya nga i-consider. So fifth is we have the unpaid mortgages, taxes, and casualty losses. So sa A is ang unpaid mortgage. So kung naay property ang deceased na naay unpaid housing loan or mortgage, pwede siya ibawas. Pero dapat legitimate loan, naay adequate consideration, and in good faith. So, ang example ani is house value which is 3 million pesos and ang remaining mortgage is 800 pesos. So, pwede i-deduct ang 800,000 pesos. So, sa B is unpaid taxes. So, mga taxes na due na bago namatay pero wala pa na bayaran. So, example is real property tax, local taxes. So, ang mga walay labot is ang income earned after death, estate tax mismo. So, example, naay unpaid real property tax na 50,000 pesos. So, deductible siya. So, sa letter C is casualty losses. Mga losses tungod sa fire, storm, bakaha, shipwreck, robbery, embezzlement, o guban pa. So, pwede na siya ibawas kung nahitabo siya during estate settlement, not compensated by insurance, and not yet claimed elsewhere. So, example, nasunog ang warehouse ng estate worth 500,000 pesos and walay insurance. So, pwede siya i-deduct. So, these deductions recognize that some estate assets are subject to outstanding obligations or unexpected losses and therefore should not be fully subjected to estate tax. So next is we have the family home. So an amount equivalent to the current fair market value of the decedent's family home, provided however that if the said current fair market value exceeds 1 million pesos, the excess shall be subject to estate tax as a sine qua non condition for the exemption or deduction. Said family home must have been the decedent's family home as certified by the barangay captain of the locality. So, definition of terms. When we say family home, it is the dwelling house, apil ang land on which it is situated, where the husband and wife or a head of the family and members of their family reside. So, as certified by the barangay captain of the locality. So, the family home is deemed constituted on the house and lot from the time it is actually occupied as a family residence and is considered as such for as long as any of its beneficiaries actually resides therein. It is from Article 152 and 153 of the Family Code. So, who are the beneficiary of the family home? Sa first, we have the husband and wife, which are the legally married man and woman. So, simple lang. Kung legally married o dito sila nagpuyo jud with their family, pwede na siya maklasify as a family home. Sa next is ang unmarried head of a family, which is dili siya kasal or legally separated, na ay ginasuporta ang family members. Pwedeng parents, siblings, or children, and nagpuyo kauban niya ug dependent sa iya. Apil po diri ang adopted children, legitimate or recognized children, kapatid or igsuon na below 21 years old, and dependent bisag over 21 basta incapable of self-support tungod sa physical or mental condition. So, naay conditions para ma-allow as deduction. So, para ma-deduct ng family home sa gross estate, need nga actual residence. So, dapat mawjud ang actual residential home sa deceased o family atong time of death ug dapat certified sa barangay captain. So, next is we have the standard deduction. So, legal basis and purpose introduced to simplify estate tax computation to reduce administrative burdens. The standard deduction is outlined in section 86A5 of the NIRC as amended. It serves as a lump sum allowance to cover various estate-related costs without the need for itemized proof, promoting efficiency in tax filing. So, amount and applicability. So, for deaths occurring on or after January 1, 2018, the standard deduction is fixed at 5 million pesos. This is a significant increase from the pre-train amount of 1 million pesos. So, it applies uniformly to the estate of residents regardless of the gross estate's size or composition. No receipts or documentation are required, just indicate it on the tax return. For non-resident aliens, no standard deduction is allowed as their taxable estate is limited to Philippine situs properties with fewer deduction privilege. So, na siya mga advantages. So, advantages, simplicities is no need for substantation, so making it ideal for estates with minimal records. So, guaranteed amount, fixed and substantial, providing predictable tax relief. Next is no cap based on estate size, documentable in full even for small estates limitations. It cannot be combined with or substituted for actual expenses in a way that double dips. However, it coexists with other deductions, not adjustable for inflation or other factors, remains static unless amended by law. In practice, the standard deduction often forms the bulk of deductions for modest estate, reducing the net estate below the tax threshold and resulting in zero tax liability. Next is we have the medical expenses. So, all medical expenses like cost of medicines, hospital bills, doctor's fees, etc., incurred, whether paid or unpaid, within 1 year before the death of the decedent shall be allowed as deduction, provided that the same are duly substantiated with official receipts for services rendered by the decedent's attending physicians, invoices, statements of account duly certified by the hospital, and such other documents in support thereof and provided. So, further, that the total amount thereof, whether paid or unpaid, does not exceed 500,000 pesos. Any amount of medical expenses incurred within 1 year from death in excess of 500,000 pesos shall no longer be allowed as deduction under this subsection. So, neither can any unpaid amounts thereof in excess of the 500,000 pesos threshold, nor any unpaid amount for medical expenses incurred prior to the 1 year period from date of death be allowed to be deducted from the gross estate as claim against the state. So, nata illustrations on how to determine the amount allowable medical expenses given the 500,000 pesos threshold amount. So, if the actual amount of medical expenses incurred is 250,000, then only 250,000 shall be allowed as deduction and not to the extent of the 500,000 threshold amount. Next is if the actual amount of medical expenses incurred within the year prior to decedent's death is 600,000 pesos, so only the maximum amount of 500,000 pesos shall be allowed as deduction. If in case the excess of 100,000 pesos is still unpaid, such amount shall not be allowed to be deducted from the gross estate as claim against the estate. Next is we have the property that is previously taxed. So an amount equal to the value specified below of any property forming part of the gross estate situated in the Philippines of any person who died within 5 years prior to the death of the decedent or transferred to the decedent by gift within 5 years prior to his death, where such property can be identified as having been received by the decedent from the donor by gift or from such prior decedent by gift, bequest, device, or inheritance, or which can be identified as having been acquired in exchange for property so received. So ang property previously taxed is ang property previously taxed nga ginatawag sa vanishing deduction is deduction sa estate tax para maiwasan ang double taxation sa same nga property. So it means kung ang property is na-tax na siya before, either gimana sa deceased gikan sa taong namatay before or nadawat niya as gift and nahitabo within 5 years bago siya namatay, pwedeng magkaroon og deduction. So nganong ginatawag siya og vanishing deduction. So ginatawag siyang vanishing kay nagkadugay nagkagamay sa bang percentage sa deduction hangtod sa mawala siya after 5 years. So mas recent ang transfer, mas dako ang deduction. So kanus-aman siya applicable. So applicable niko ang property is part sa gross estate sa deceased located in the Philippines, gikan sa inheritance, legacy, device, bequest, or gift received within 5 years before death, and identifiable paghihapon ng property or bisag exchange na basta traceable. So the law recognizes that the same property should not be heavily taxed twice within a short period of time. That is why vanishing deduction is allowed. So schedule of deduction. So pag within 1 year pa siya is 100%. Kung ang prior owner kay namatay or ang gift kay nadawat within 1 year before death, 100% sa value ang deductible. So for example, si Mr. Cruz kay namatay atong 2025 at 2024 is nakamana siya og yuta worth 2 million pesos. So gikan sa iyang father. So less than 1 year lang. Ang deduction niya is 2 million times 100%. So 2 million. If the transfer happened within 1 year, the full value of the property may be deducted. Second is more than 1 year but not more than 2 years. So ang deductible ana niya is 80%. Pag mulapas nag 1 year pero wala pa siya nilapas og 2 years. So example is ang property value is 2 million. So ang deduction niya is 2 million times 80% is 1,600,000 pesos. So next is more than 2 years but not more than 3 years. Ang deductible ana niya is 60%. So for example, ang property value is 2 million Japon. So ang deduction ana niya is 2 million times 60% is equals to 1,200,000. Next naman is pag more than 3 years but not more than 4 years, which is 40% ang deductible. So for example, ang property value is 2 million pesos Japon times 40% is equals to 800,000 pesos. Pag more than 4 years but not more than 5 years, 20%. So pag more than 5 years na siya, wala na siya deduction. Maong gitawag siya nga vanishing is because nagkadugay is magkawala po ng condition para maalaw. So dili automatic ang deduction is naay conditions. So first is na-tax na before. So dapat ang donor's tax or ang estate tax is already computed and paid. So nga naman, it is para masigurado nga tinuod na tax na siya before. So example, kung ang giingon nga gift property siya pero walay donor's tax paid, so dili siya pwede i-deduction included in Philippine gross estate and same property or traceable. So that's all for my report, and I hope you understand something. Thank you.